If I'm shooting for happiness, well, there's a way you can get to that, right? You can get the happiness through alcohol and through drugs, through pornography, through, the other people patting you in the head because you did a great job, all of that. You can get happiness. The problem with happiness, it's like a drug. It hits you hard like that dopamine, and then it disappears. And then you need more, and then you need more. So really, if you're chasing happiness, if you're in the pursuit of happiness, listeners out there, you're going to find yourself constantly looking for the next fix. It's when you transcend happiness. Hello. Welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building 6-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. And boy, the next 4 weeks we have action-packed with just an incredible amount of content. We have Scott Lesak from Castle Rocks Landscape Company. He's on again. He was on last year, and we're going to go deep into some subjects which some of you might find uncomfortable. The first one we're going to tackle is overcoming addiction. How do we do it? Scott's going to share his story of addiction with alcohol and how he overcame that and turned that addiction into power, turned that landmine into a launch pad. We're going to go through that here in this week, followed by how to shift your mindset from surviving to thriving. So many of us get stuck in survival mode. We're going to teach you how to unlock that. Next up, Scott and I are going to unpack the top 3 strategies to build and keep a team that cares. What you need to be doing, what you need to be not doing, and how to create that dream team that's going to be able to help you grow your company. Followed by how to build a business that doesn't need you. Wouldn't that be great? We're going to unpack what we've learned along the ways and how we've created companies that run without us. We're going to teach you some of our tricks, some of our strategies, and some of the things we learned along the way. So guys, buckle up for the next 4 weeks. We got a lot of great content coming your way. And the next 4 weeks is really designed to help you become more of a business owner and to help you live the very best life you possibly can. Hey, Scott, you know what? I'm so excited to have you back on the show this week. We're going to go in the next 4 weeks. We're going to go into a lot of really deep subjects. And I'm just excited for you to be on here speaking into these subjects. So Scott, welcome back.
Thanks, Josh. Great to be back, man. It's any day I get to talk to you is a good day, so I'm happy to be here.
Right back at you, brother. Right back at you. So, Scott, for the listeners out there who might not know who Scott Lesak is, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are right now.
I'm just an ordinary guy trying to make a difference in the world. Got a much deeper backstory than that. I'm a landscape professional. I have a degree from Penn State in landscape contracting, design, build. I've been running a company in eastern Pennsylvania for about 20 years. That's getting to the point we're going to be spreading up and down the East Coast, hitting some southern markets as well as northern markets. We're a big snow company, almost too much snow, so we're figuring out how we can get some more landscape in there and all those pieces. But I'm a personal growth advocate. I am a personal growth I'm the result of personal growth. The person I am today goes from a lot of time spent reading and reflecting and praying and getting spiritual and all kinds of lifestyle changes that have happened over the past couple of years for me. So that's really who I am.
I appreciate it. And your company name?
Castle Rocks Landscape Company, and I have a coaching and consulting company, Inspire You.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So I know last time we talked, we got into a subject that most don't want to talk about. The subject was addiction, or is addiction for today. So Scott, I'd love for you to tell us, your story quickly and kind of bring us up to speed with your experience so far with addiction and how it's impacted your life. And I'd love the listeners to listen along because it's going to be a lot of good jewels in here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What was once the most embarrassing story in my life has turned into one of the stories I'm most proud of and love to share. And that really is my addiction with alcohol that I've been combating for many, many years. it all started when we were younger, drinking in high school, like what I thought was everybody does. And the more I learn is some people do that, but, it is kind of standard. And, started in that period, went to Penn State. That speaks for itself. So really had a good outlet and an area to really grow how much I was drinking. And after I got done with college, I never left college behind. I just kept going, and it turned into a lifestyle rather than a hobby and a pastime on the weekends. And drinking on the weekends, went to drinking during the middle of the week a couple times, went to drinking every day, went to some of those days the drinking would start in the morning instead of in the evening. And it just really started to run my life. I'm sure we're diving into a whole lot more detail on this in the conversation. So, fast forwarding a little bit, I made a decision in 2018, 6 years ago today. It's May 1st of 2024. So 6 years ago today,
Wow.
I was in the worst of the worst, man. That was when it all started come crashing down. I had gone through periods of time that I would stop drinking, going to AA meetings. I definitely recognized it was a problem before this area, but the month of May was turmoil for me in 2018. And by the end of that month, I decided that I needed to go to a rehab. I needed to get this under control. I had spoken at rehabs when I was going through good times of recovery and had relapsed again and again and again. And after having been in that situation, I knew that was where I needed to go. So for the first time in my recovery journey, I made the decision myself rather than getting pushed there from other people that was the direction I needed to go. And best decision I ever made. Best decision I ever made.
Wow. And it happened to land on May 1st, right? Wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. Well, June 1st is the real. This is the June 1st is the real sober date, but
Got it. This is when you started on the journey, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I know it's subject for some listeners. It might make you a little queasy right now, right? Might make you a little bit uncomfortable, this idea of addiction. And as men, we're supposed to be so strong and all that. But you know what? When it comes to addiction, we all have that capacity. We all have capacity for becoming addicted to stuff. Some things are good. Maybe it's fitness. You become addicted to every day going out and working out. Maybe it's being with your family. You just love being around them. And sometimes it's not always helpful. Let's put it that way. It's not always good stuff you become addicted to. Oftentimes we start looking for a way out, through alcohol or through pornography or through weed or through so many other things, food, and as business owners, and that's why I wanted Scott to come on, because as business owners, until we face that beast, that fear head on, until we face that addiction head on and call it for what it really is, it's always going to run us. It will always be in the background. It'll always be that voice in your head that's telling you, you're not good enough. You have to do this. Nobody needs to know. This is my little secret. And the crazy part is we hold these things from our loved ones too, these addictions, right? We hold them from our loved ones. And we were like, hey, if they don't know, it's not a thing. Or everybody has the same problem. Everybody watches porn, right? Everybody drinks. So why am I broken? There's nothing wrong with me. I can keep this up, no problem. But the reality is, we all know deep down that that's bullshit. We all know deep down that we'd be better without it, but we just don't know how. We don't know how to get past that. So, Scott, I'd love to know, how is it affecting your daily life, running your business and all of that, the alcohol?
Oh, man, it really ran my life. It was my life. I was trying to run my life outside of drinking. It was kind of the opposite to what you just said. Alcohol was my life, and I had to figure out how to run everything else in between the drinks and think that I was good, literally hiding in closets from my family. Like, hey, I'm going to take a couple swigs out of this bottle right now. And they didn't see it. Nobody's going to know. I can say I had a drink at lunch if they smell it on my breath. No problem. Like, those were literally the absolutely manic, crazy thoughts that went through my head through a lot of this. And, a lot of people get hurt with that type of stuff. A lot of people will be lying to their families and hiding from their families. And that's what I did. I was lying to my wife, my best friend, the person who's my biggest advocate, lying to her through this whole thing. And, my highly successful business doing $250,000 a year at that time was like, man, what a joke that was. Now that I see where we are today and a whole lot more than $250,000, but couldn't get out of my own way. And that's the biggest thing. I was the hurdle. It was me. I could not get out of my own way to save my life. And I really started to recognize probably around the 2010 time frame that I had a drinking problem. I was living in a firehouse at that point in time, experiencing some pretty traumatic stuff. We were a busy firehouse, and that led to some PTSD in the next decade from that time frame. But I noticed that we were going out as a group and just, I would drink more than the rest of the group. Or there would be 3 of us that would drink more and the rest of them would just have a couple beers when we were having like 20 of them. And, that was when I really first started to think about it internally. But I never said anything. Never said a word about it because, if I admit I have a problem, then I got to do something about it. So I wasn't ready at that point. And, my first time frame of actually doing something was 2014. 2 weeks before my wedding, my wife gave me the ultimatum. She said, you need to stop drinking or I'm not going to marry you. This is getting out of hand. And it was like, yeah, okay, great. No, well, I want to marry you, so I'm going to stop drinking. And that was all the wrong reasons. It was the right motivation, I will say, but it was the wrong reasons. I wasn't ready to be done. I wanted to be done for her. Yeah. I was motivated by that, but it wasn't for me. So, that was the beginning of really opening my eyes and seeing I had a problem. I went into some outpatient counseling. I went into Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and, really had to start changing my thought process and recognizing my piece of this puzzle and get rid of some of the victim sense. So I bring that era in. I was 2014 to 2018 was tough. My longest stint in that period of time was 18 months without a drink. And I thought I was doing pretty well. It was a year and a half. That is pretty good. If you get a day, you're doing well when you're in a really bad spot. And then you get another day and another day and another day. That's the way it works. But that 18 months was great. But the problem was I was a dry drunk through that time frame. I wasn't going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I wasn't getting counseling. I wasn't talking to anybody about it. And alcohol is definitely not my problem. I can sit down and drink an entire case of beer in one sitting. That's not a problem, man. I can do that well, and I'm really good at it. Alcohol was my solution. The way that case of beer that I can sit down and drink makes me feel was the reason that I was drinking. That was my solution. And I just ripped it out by the roots without replacing it with anything else. So that was challenging in that time frame for me. And looking back on it, I don't know how I survived, because now I have solutions in place that have replaced that in healthy ways. And there's a lot that goes into it.
I like how you said that, because you're exactly right. When it comes to addiction or it comes to addictive things, if you rip it out by the root, but you don't replace it with something, weeds are going to grow back. That plant is going to try to grow back again. That addiction is going to try to come back, because really the opposite of addiction is connection. That's really what you're after, right? You're after connection. You think that, hey, if I have these drinks or I smoke this weed or whatever it might be, that there's going to be a connection. Same with pornography. If there's a connection there, like you're really, that's what you're seeking, listeners. That's what you're seeking. You're not seeking the alcohol or the smut, or you're not seeking the weed. You're seeking connection through that. That's your medium. The question is, can you create an environment, or how do you create an environment where you don't need those vices in order to get that connection? And to be honest with you, my journey's been, it's been more about, how do I face the fears that these things, these vices, are holding me back from? Like, they're giving me a false sense of hope within that. How do I face those fears that are deep down inside and destroy them, so I don't need to go down that path again, right? So I'd love to hear how you broke through that, how you mentioned about being a dry drunk. Like, how did you finally get past the identity of being an alcoholic and get into the other side where you're like, you know what? I don't need that anymore. It does not have control over me anymore. I filled it correctly, and now I'm living a much happier life, growing a business past the $250,000 mark, right? And growing. Like how did you break through that?
That's a great question. That's really the secret sauce right there, and the answer is a lot more complex than just sitting here and answering the question. Yeah. To break through that, it takes self-realization. You have to understand a whole lot more about yourself first. And the reality for me was I had to recognize that drinking wasn't fun anymore. I was stuck on these memories of, the college days and some of the really good times that we had afterwards. I have some great memories of drinking. I don't want to erase those. Like, I still remember those today, remember some of the nights, some of the people we were with, some of the stuff I thought was fun and I realize really dumb now, and some of the stuff that was actually fun. All those pieces. But it got to a point that it wasn't fun anymore. And when it hit that point, I didn't even see that happen. I mean, it was years after that I truly saw that happen. And that was when the lifestyle started to come in. And at the level I am today and the understanding I have of neurology, it really makes sense, because what we're doing, we're craving chemical releases. We're releasing dopamine every time we're taking that drink. We're releasing cortisol. We're releasing these feel-good chemicals in our body that our body craves more and more. And that dopamine hit is fantastic when it hits. But the more you hit that dopamine, the faster it crashes. And it doesn't go back to normal. It goes below the line. And just knowing that that's how that works. When you go below the line, that's when it brings the depression, the anxiety. In the recovery world, we say the guilt, shame, and remorse that you feel about everything you did. You go out and drink one night, you have guilt, shame, and remorse the next day. I mean, that's depression on a deep level. That is depression, because you gave your body so much of a chemical that it craves, and then it went away right away, and it's not producing it anymore, and it's begging you to give it more. That's what you're feeling. So navigating through that was really the first step for me. Learning those pieces, learning that that's what my body was doing chemically. And I have an allergy to alcohol. Like, that was another one that was like crazy to me when I found out, went through all these tests and everything. I get hungover worse than other people, which makes me want to keep drinking to keep getting that stuff, because I'm actually allergic to alcohol. And to this day, that's my first answer. If anybody asks me for a drink, it's like, no, I don't drink. Well, why don't you drink? Because I'm allergic to alcohol. That's what comes out of my mouth, because that's the reality of it. Yeah. And my allergy doesn't give me hives. My allergy doesn't make my nose run and our eyes watery like the pollen outside today is doing. My allergy is, hey, that hit me. I need more of it. I need more of it. This is off. My body is telling me that this is off, and I need more of it to make it back to normal. And that allergy is a complete lie. It's complete bullshit. It's not right.
Yeah. No, absolutely, dude. And I just want to read the definition of addiction for anybody out there that might be confused. It's exhibiting a compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity, strongly inclined to do, use, or indulge in something repeatedly. That's the definition of addiction. So oftentimes, especially as men, we never want to admit about those things, right? Sometimes it's an addiction to work. Right? There's that, right? The idea of constantly having to have something going on, the addiction to being busy, addiction to constantly winning or constantly chasing success. There's an addiction there, right? Constantly repeating this. So it doesn't always have to be a substance. The question you have to slow down and ask yourself is, why am I doing this? What am I trying to do? If I'm shooting for happiness, well, there's a way you can get to that, right? You can get the happiness through alcohol and through drugs, through pornography, through, the other people patting you in the head because you did a great job, all of that. You can get happiness. The problem with happiness, it's like a drug. It hits you hard like that dopamine, and then it disappears. And then you need more, and then you need more. So really, if you're chasing happiness, if you're in the pursuit of happiness, listeners out there, you're going to find yourself constantly looking for the next fix. It's when you transcend happiness and you focus on joy and fulfillment in life, those two are everlasting. Those two, once you figure out how to do that. And I tell you right now, it's not going to be through any kind of vice. It's not going to be through any kind of alcohol or drug or anything that you're waiting for any kind of, pat on the head from somebody else. This is the inner work. And most, including myself, and Scott, you could tell me if this was true for you. Most people, I know my experience was, I was too afraid to look in the closet. I was too afraid to talk about this stuff out loud. I was too afraid to admit to anybody that I had a problem. Like, I would not want to talk about this stuff because people would think less of me. So I would never communicate these things, and I kept it to myself. And the problem was, that's where the demons live, in the secrets. The demons are always there in the secrets. But when you finally build the courage to tell one person, hey, I'm struggling with this, one person, the demons lose some of their grip on your soul. And then two people. And then you realize your story has been planted in your soul by God so that you can help others who are going through the same problems. And then you start feeling this opportunity to contribute and help. It doesn't have the control over your heart anymore. It doesn't have the control over your mind anymore. And there is freedom on the other side. But the first thing you got to do is face that fear. And you've got to open up and at least tell one person, a second person, a third person. That could be the scariest thing you've ever experienced, to think what that could be. But I'll tell you right now, through my experience, that has been one of the most freeing things I've ever done. So Scott, how was that for you?
I couldn't agree more. I think what you just described was actually the mid phase for me, though. That fear of telling other people, fear of digging out what else was in there. I had to get to a point first to be able to dig. I didn't have a shovel at the beginning. I had no idea what was going on. Oh, you got to get inside. You got to figure out, why are you drinking? Because I like to drink. What do you mean, why am I drinking? I like to drink. I have fun with this. I hang out with my friends. That's why. No, there's so much deeper than that. I didn't know how to access that. I had to learn that skill set first to access that. And it really came down to such a long period of time of hiding and sheltering emotions, the reasons I had PTSD, the reasons I had all of this. It's not the traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
It was the way I coped with that. The alcohol wasn't the experiences that were happening to me in life. It was the way that I coped with them. And then I had to make this switch that those experiences actually weren't happening to me. They were all happening for me. And by me not experiencing the emotions attached to them, I didn't get the full experience. Yeah. So I played a victim rather than being able to really see what happened. So that was step number one. I had to become self-aware enough. I had to know how to even get to these answers because it wasn't there. And once I got to that point, I was like, whoa, I'm not normal. There is something wrong here. I don't want to tell anybody about this. Like, I'm this guy. I'm this prestigious guy in my head, which that's bullshit too. But, that was what I thought. I didn't want anybody to know about it. And it took me 2.5 years after rehab to really open up to the outside. People close to me, my inner circle, they all knew. They knew the gory details and those conversations, the ones that we fear having, the ones that we don't want to let people know. Those are the demons holding us back because those conversations are what unlocks the next level. Those conversations are what unlock where you're headed and how to get into that more information. I'm learning more about myself every single day. When I have a day that I don't learn anything about myself, I'm like, whoa, what did I do wrong today? I missed something today because I did not feel that feeling. And that happens often too. That's the whole thing. This is not like I'm going to an AA meeting. I'm going to get an A in AA and be good for the rest of my life. That's all it takes. No, this is deep, man. This is a lifelong battle of personal betterment, but it gets fun. At the beginning, it sucks. There's nothing like, man, what am I doing here? I feel good. I'm not hungover. I'm thinking clearer. That's cool. I feel good. Like, is this it though? That doesn't even scratch the surface. I mean, once you get on this personal growth journey and you start learning different things, like I study neurology, I study physiology, I study just random things now in books, and it helps every aspect of my life that I would have been spending that time drinking before. Is that an addiction of mine now? Probably, but it's a healthy one, and it's moving me forward in life, and that's one of my areas that I really focus. And it's incredible. I mean, I was promised a life beyond my wildest dreams if I stuck this out at the very beginning. And it's like, okay, cool. I don't know how wild my dreams can get. And then thought processes come back. And it's like, oh, man, well, I want money. I want the riches. I want this. And, you're still sick if you're thinking that way, man. That's not the stuff. But that's progress. That is progress because it wasn't, I saw something else. And then it all comes and it's like, well, I want a happy, healthy family. Okay, we're getting there. I think we all want that at some point in time. But now it's completely different and it continues to change. I want to be better. I want to be a better version of myself. I crave to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday. I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. I want to do that for my wife. I want to do that for my kids. I want to do that for my coworkers. I want to do that for everybody I coach. I want to do that for the rest of the world because I have so much inside of me that I got to give away. And I can't keep it inside of me. I got to let this out. And, the Bible tells us that our power is in our testimony. So let's use our testimony. Talk about your story because I'm not the only person that went through this.
Nope.
There's not 1 million more people that went through this. There's not 2 million more people that went through this. There's hundreds of millions of people that have gone through exactly what I went through. They need to hear this message if they haven't gotten help yet. They need to hear this message. And I know when I was sick and tired 6 years ago today, if I would have listened to a podcast like this, maybe that would have fast-tracked and it wouldn't have even taken a month for me to go to that rehab because I was thinking it. I was already thinking it at this point. It just wasn't quite there enough. And it's magical. It's absolutely magical. I promise you that.
It's interesting. It's often said that behind your greatest fear is your greatest treasure. Dragon holds it. The demons hold that. And silence is their sauce, if you will. Silence is what they want. They want quiet. But when you start sharing your testimony, I share my testimony. Next thing you know, others are coming up on the side and they're like, hey, me too. Hey, absolutely. I went through it too. And there's power in that, and not power for us. There's power in the release of those, of all that stored negative energy, all those doubts that we have of ourself and our value and all of those things. People often ask, how can I charge more for my work and all that kind of stuff? It's like, you have to find value in yourself. If you feel like you're valuable, then you will charge more. If you don't feel like you're valuable and you feel like all these vices make you worthless, and if somebody really knew what was going on behind the scenes, they would never love you, right? Deep down, that's really what our bigger fear is. If anybody knew who we truly were, they would never love us. So we have to put on this persona in order to make it seem like that's the case. Like, people can love me because I look like, sound like, do like everybody else, until they realize that we're all flawed in some way. We're all beautifully flawed that way. That's how God created us. And they're not flaws. Those are gifts. And when we can retell that story from a negative perspective as a victim into a positive perspective as now we have these stories that we can share. You can share your story, Scott, like you have the podcast before. Is one of our most downloaded episodes. And this, having to be able to do this again, this next opportunity, I think it is so important, specifically in the trades, because we work ridiculously hard in the trades. I'm speaking for all the brothers and sisters out there, ridiculously hard, trying to balance family, trying to balance life, trying to balance success, trying to balance our bodies, trying to balance spirituality, trying to balance all of these things. And then we have clients that are demanding and telling us what to do, and a wife that wants more of our time, or a husband that wants more of our time, kids that you feel guilty every day leaving the house from, or can't wait to get out of the house because there's just so many things we manage as business owners and as entrepreneurs, that it makes perfect sense that food or alcohol or weed or pornography is a go-to, because you can go there and everything is good there until it's not, until you go to the other side and you end up in the shame cycle and the guilt cycle that happens all the time, and you keep doing it. And the question is, how much longer are you going to stand for that? How much longer are you going to allow that to be your story? Because you know what? The person who actually holds the pen, the one that's penning your story, is you. Why do you keep writing a shitty story? Why don't you change that? Flip the page and write a different story. First step is to talk to somebody. That's the first step of it all. So, Scott, how has your faith played into this shift for you, this getting out? Like, how has that worked for you? Has God been any part of this, or is it not at all been a part of it?
Man, I'm just laughing at the cohesion between our messages, because that note I just wrote down about 30 seconds ago was all about the spiritual journey of this and that. That was what I was going to talk about next anyway. So thanks for asking the question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's spiritual, 100% spiritual. And, I'm Christian. Jesus Christ is my Savior. I have a personal relationship with him now. Happy to share my testimony about that with anybody who wants to know it. I'm not going to sit here and cram it down your throat, though. I will cram spirituality down your throat. You got to start praying. You got to start realizing there's something else out there, and it's evolving. But let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to alcohol. I mean, alcohol is sold at wine and spirit stores because there's a spiritual principle to it. It erases it. It null and voids your relationship with God above and beyond anything else that I have ever done. I mean, I've never done hard drugs. I've smoked a whole lot of weed, though, and also the drinking and everything. And throughout smoking weed, you could still keep a relationship with God. Throughout drinking, I could never do that. It was just dead. That wine and spirits is dead. And that's not me condoning smoking weed either. Let's not read too far into that. But just the spiritual side of this, those are the demons holding us back. It's creating that gap from building a relationship with God. And that's what we need to do. Your relationship with God needs to be treated exactly like that, like a marriage, like a friendship. You invest time in it, it's going to get stronger. You have conversations and communicate openly, it's going to get stronger. You stop communicating and distance yourself, it's going to get weaker. That's the way it works. And, before sobriety and even while being sober, I've experienced it on both sides of that. I can distance myself from God, and that's one of those days that I'm like, whoa, I didn't better myself today. What just happened? I gotta look at what's going. Usually when that happens, the root of that is spiritual, because I am neglecting my relationship in some way, shape, or form. And it begins to go, and I can tell you today, I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. I take it for granted every day, every single day. I'm like, oh man, I want this. I wish I could do this. I wish I had this going on. Yep. And some of those times I just have to sit back and pause and say, today is what I prayed about 5 years ago. Today is what my dreams were 10 years ago. I am living that. This is good enough. I'm exactly where I should be right now. And I'm not complacent. I'm definitely not complacent. I'm not done. I got a lot further to go. But I'm really happy where I am today. I have fulfillment. You use that word, and I love the way you brought that into this, because it is. It's about fulfillment. Happiness is an emotion. Happiness stems from dopamine and cortisol, whether you're getting that from a substance or you're getting that from an experience. That happiness stems from a naturally produced chemical, albeit, but it's still a chemical. Whereas fulfillment is finding joy in those challenges. You get that really tough email, and finding joy in navigating how you're going to respond to that email or respond to that situation. And I'm almost speechless about how to even define it. It's a feeling that you almost have to get to.
Yeah, and Tony Robbins says it best when it comes to a couple of things, but one in particular is that problems are the gifts we grow from. All right, if we can reframe that and think that, you know what, hey, if I was just more successful, I wouldn't have any problems, that's bullshit. The reality is every human has problems. You only don't have problems when you're in a box at the end, right? So with that being the case, we just need to upgrade our problems. If you keep having the same problem over and over again, it's time to fix that, right? And back to the spirituality side, again, what did we say that the opposite of addiction is? It's connection, right? Connection. And if it's connection, you can connect with people, but some people are going to let you down, which may put you right back into that same spiral that got you into addiction to beginning with. But I'll say through my testimony, I've been all over the place with this. And now I'm finally settled. That the connection with Christ has been the most fulfilling and joyful experience of my life. And it continues each and every day. And I'm not here trying to convert anybody out there. I'm simply saying that that's been my testimony. That until I found that love and connection with him each day, that there's been, everything in the past is small compared to what I feel each and every day. And that fills that gap that those other vices used to try to fill for a short time. So, Scott, we could go on for days for this, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So how can people find you? How can they reach out if they have questions about what they heard today or have more questions about how you got through it?
I'm all over LinkedIn and Facebook. Scott with 2 T's, Lesak, Lesak. Look me up, reach out to me, message me. Feel free to send me an email, scott@myinspireyou.com. I do life coaching. I do business coaching. In addition to what I've accomplished with the landscape company. So if anybody wants to talk, but more importantly for this topic, for what we're talking about here, if you're struggling, reach out. There is no money motivation behind what I say. I want to help you. If you don't even know what to do, just reach out and say, I don't know what to do. Help. I know the questions asked to get you further along. That's all you have to say to me. Reach out to me. Unbiased, confidential. We will talk. I promise you that.
And that's what you're going to find, guys, is when you finally start opening up and you say, you know what, I really just want to reach out to somebody, whether it's Scott or someone in your life, you're going to find they're going to open up with beautiful open arms and an open heart, and all that crap in your head that you thought that everyone would judge you for. They're just going to be like, oh, you too? Yeah, I managed that too. And I finally talked to somebody in the past. My bigger goal with this episode is I know one person out there is listening to this and it's stirring something in their heart. I know it. Because this type of an episode is what stirred it in mine. And the next thing you know, you realize you're not alone and that you're not worthless and that people out there are going to love you and will love you, and you're more than enough already. The first step is to admit that you need help. And when you do, everything changes. So the question for you, is it going to be one day, or is today day one? So guys, thank you. First of all, Scott, thank you for coming on. We have another episode here with Scott where we're going to be shifting from this conversation over to how to shift your mindset from surviving to thriving. That's going to be next week. So Scott, I can't wait to go deep with you on that as well. But thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Looking forward to next week. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.